Story 1. My name is Michael Carter. And if someone had asked me a couple of years ago what it felt like to be on top of the world, I would have said, I don't know, I'm still climbing. But I knew my hands had already grabbed the edge of the cliff, and I was pulling myself up. My story didn't start in the slums or in golden penthouses. I'm from an average American family, the kind there are millions of. Our house in a Columbus, Ohio, suburb, with its neat lawn that my dad mowed every Saturday, and the old, cozy kitchen where my mom baked her famous apple cookies. My parents, John and Sarah Carter, were simple people. My dad worked as a parts manager at a warehouse, my mom as a nurse at a local clinic. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. I had a younger brother, Tommy, who was always borrowing my stuff, and a dog named Baxter, a mutt with a surprisingly philosophical look in his eyes. Since childhood, I hustled. If I wanted new sneakers, and not the hand-me-downs from my cousin, I'd go mow the neighbors' lawns. If I wanted to go to summer camp, I'd wash cars. My parents instilled a simple truth in me: if you want something, earn it. They gave us everything we needed, but for spending money and our wants, Tommy and I had to earn it ourselves. When it was time for college, I didn't hesitate. I knew I wanted to connect my life with technology. The world of digital codes and networks fascinated me. I enrolled at Ohio State University in the computer science faculty, specializing in cybersecurity. The scholarship covered only part of the expenses. The rest was supposed to be covered by my parents and myself. I couldn't afford to just study. Studying was my main job, but it didn't pay. So my day looked like this. Morning, a side job. Afternoon, lectures. Evening, the library. And on weekends, another shift. Among the many small jobs, food delivery, working at the campus cafe, helping in the computer lab, there was one that no one knew about. Not even my parents. I found it on a bulletin board in the student center. Helper needed for elderly lady. Early morning hours. Hourly pay. The woman who posted the ad was named Mrs. Eleanor Reed. She was in her 80s, lived alone in an old Victorian house in a quiet neighborhood, a 20-minute walk from campus. She had arthritis and a weak heart, but, as I quickly learned, a steely character and a sharp mind. My job was to get to her by 7 in the morning. I had to help her get out of bed, make a light breakfast, oatmeal, toast, and tea, make sure she took her morning pills, and if needed, help with cleaning or go to the store for groceries. It took about an hour to an hour and a half. Sounds simple, but Mrs. Reed wasn't one for fuss. She demanded the toast be toasted exactly golden brown, and the tea steeped for exactly 3 minutes. But she was incredibly kind and grateful. We often chatted. She told me about her youth, about her husband who died in the war, about how she worked as a schoolteacher. Wisdom shone in her eyes, and in her voice was the strength of someone who had been through a lot. The problem was that Mrs. Reed lived a bit far, and I often couldn't make it to my first class by 9. Especially if she felt worse than usual, or if it was snowing and the roads were slippery. I'd run as fast as I could, but I'd still be 5, 10, sometimes 15 minutes late. My nemesis was Professor Henderson, who taught the Fundamentals of Algorithms course. He was a man in his 50s with a perpetually dissatisfied face and a nitpicky nature. He couldn't stand students being late. Mr. Carter, his voice would boom as I, out of breath, slipped through the door. Your time, apparently, is more valuable than mine. Would you be so kind as to explain why systematically breaking discipline is normal for you? I was silent. I'd look at the floor and go to my seat. I couldn't tell him about Mrs. Reed. It would have sounded like an excuse. Besides, it was my private business. I didn't want pity or for it to sound like a cop-out. Let them think what they want. Think I'm out partying all night, or just a lazy, irresponsible kid. I didn't care. Carter, are you even listening to me? If you keep this up, I'll fail you, and you'll be out of my course. He'd shout at my back. I'm listening, Professor, I'd reply quietly, opening my notebook. And I was listening. I listened and wrote down his every word. I pored over textbooks at night, sat in the library until closing time, wrote the programs he assigned, and submitted them ahead of schedule. I wanted to prove, not so much to him, but to myself, that I wasn't just an irresponsible student. That I could do it. On the very first exam, I aced his test better than anyone in the group. Henderson, checking the papers, looked up at me in surprise, but said nothing. His nagging became a little quieter, but didn't stop. He still couldn't stand my lateness. So passed 4 years. 4 years of morning runs to Mrs. Reed, 4 years of sleep deprivation, 4 years of Professor Henderson's reproaches, and 4 years of intense studying. I worked like a dog. I saw my classmates going to parties, dating girls, while I sat with my books or ran off to another shift. But I didn't regret it. When I received the Dean's Scholarship for Academic Achievement, I felt pride. I knew my parents, who sent me a little money and always said, "Hang in there, son, we believe in you," were proud of me too, even if they didn't fully understand what I was doing. Graduation day was my triumph. I walked to get my honors diploma and caught the eye of Professor Henderson, sitting on the stage. There was no trace of his former strictness in his gaze. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. It was the highest recognition I could have gotten from him. My parents beamed. Mom cried, wiping her tears with a lace handkerchief. Dad, usually restrained with emotions, clapped me on the shoulder so hard my lungs almost flew out, repeating, "Attaboy, Mikey." I knew it. I always knew it. Tommy, who had by then grown taller than me, grinned and gave me a thumbs up. It was a moment of pure, unclouded happiness. And a week later, I got a call. The call that would define my fate for the next few years. I was invited for an interview at Secure Edge Solutions, a company in Cleveland specializing in cybersecurity. It wasn't some small outfit, but a serious player in the market, with contracts with major banks and medical institutions. The interview was tough. 3 hours of technical questions, situational tasks, logic tests. I felt wrung out like a lemon, but I knew my answers. I saw the interest spark in the eyes of my future boss, Paul Grayson. 2 days later, I was offered a position as a junior security analyst with a salary that made me whistle. It was 3 times what my father earned. "Don't let us down, Michael," Paul said, shaking my hand on my first day. "We're counting on you." The first 6 months at Secure Edge were like a roller coaster. I absorbed information like a sponge. Work was buzzing. We looked for vulnerabilities in code, repelled DDoS attacks on client servers, developed encryption systems. I was the youngest on the team, but seemingly the hungriest for work. I stayed late, studied logs, wrote automation scripts. My immediate supervisor, Tom, a grumpy but fair guy in his 40s, was initially wary of me, but quickly gained respect when I found a critical vulnerability in a key client system that everyone else had missed. "Carter, you've got a nose for crap," he chuckled, clapping me on the shoulder. "That's good. In our line of work, you need that nose." I enjoyed my work. I liked feeling needed, important. Feeling that the security of hundreds of thousands of people depended on my actions. I wasn't a hero in a cape, but I was an invisible guardian in the digital world. After 2 years, I was promoted to analyst, and another 2 years later, to lead specialist in the incident response group. My salary increased by another half. I could afford to rent a nice apartment in downtown Cleveland, buy a decent car, a silver Ford Mustang, my childhood dream, and, of course, help my parents. I sent them money every month. Not because they asked, but because I knew Dad was nearing retirement, and the house needed repairs. It felt natural to me. They had invested as much as they could in me, and now it was my turn to take care of them. Mom initially refused, saying, "Michael, take care of yourself, we have everything." But I insisted. Seeing them able to afford a trip to Florida or simply not worry about the price of medicine was a better reward for me than any bonus. At work, I was valued. No one ever had any complaints about me. Paul Grayson, my boss, spoke of me as a model employee. I knew my job inside and out. I felt in my element. Life was good. I even started dating a girl, Emily, a pretty architect I met at the gym. We had a light, no-strings-attached relationship that suited me just fine. I was 26 years old. I had a great job, good friends, a loving family. It seemed like only light and endless possibilities lay ahead. I thought about buying a house in a couple of years, maybe even proposing to Emily if our relationship grew into something more. I looked at the Cleveland skyscrapers from my office window on the 25th floor and felt like the master of my own destiny. As fate loves irony, it picks moments like these. That call came on a Thursday, in the middle of the workday. I was just finishing a report on yet another phishing attack on a bank. The number was unfamiliar, with a Columbus area code. "Mr. Carter?" The woman's voice was tired and official. "I'm calling from Columbus City Hospital, intensive care unit. Your father, John Carter, was brought here this morning. His condition is listed as critical." The world around me shrank to the size of the phone receiver. I stopped hearing the office hum, the keyboard clicks, the chatter of colleagues. What? How? What happened? My voice cracked into a rasp. The attending physicians will give you the details. You need to come as soon as possible. I hung up and sat for a few seconds, staring at one spot. Then I got up and, not remembering myself, walked to Paul's office. He was on the phone, but seeing my face, he quickly ended the call. Michael, what happened? You're green. Paul, my voice trembled. I need to leave urgently. For Columbus. My father is in the hospital. Critical condition. I need a leave of absence. Please. Paul didn't hesitate for a second. Guys like me, he valued. Go, of course. Don't worry about a thing. Take as much time as you need. The work will keep. If you need anything, money, a contact, call me immediately. Hang in there, Mike. I was grateful. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and flew out of the office. The 4-hour drive to Columbus felt like an eternity. The worst scenarios ran through my head. Dad was a rock. He never complained about his health. Well, blood pressure, a bad back after work. Nothing serious. How could this be? The hospital greeted me with the smell of disinfectant and silence. I found the unit. Sitting on a chair in the corridor was my mother. I barely recognized her. Sarah Carter, my mom, had always been a well-groomed woman with a lively face and light, slightly wavy hair. Now before me sat a hunched old woman with deep wrinkles carved into her face in just a few days. She had lost so much weight that her dress hung on her like a sack. Her hair, which she always dyed, had grown out at the roots and was not just gray, but ash white. But the scariest thing was her eyes. The empty, lifeless look of someone staring into the abyss. Mom, I said softly, approaching. She raised her eyes to me, and for a second something warm flickered in them, but it immediately died out. Michael, you came, she whispered. Her voice sounded hollow, as if from a barrel. What's wrong with Dad? What happened? Come, she took my hand. Her fingers were bony and cold. We entered the intensive care room. It was dim, machines beeping. A man lay on the bed. I stepped closer and froze. This was not my father. The John Carter one knew was a sturdy man with ruddy cheeks and calloused hands. This man looked like a skeleton draped in skin. Yellow-gray skin, sunken cheeks, open mouth, the smell of sickness and decay. He stared at the ceiling with unseeing eyes. Dad? I whispered. Dad, it's me, Michael. His eyes slowly turned towards me. For a second, I thought I saw recognition flicker, but then his gaze became empty again, and he stared back at the ceiling. He didn't see me. He saw nothing at all. I sat down on the chair next to the bed. My legs gave way. I looked at my father and couldn't believe it. How? When? Why didn't I know anything? Mom, I asked, feeling a lump rise in my throat. What's wrong with him? Mom stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder. Her voice was quiet and flat, like a robot's. Cancer, Michael. Final stage. Metastasis throughout his body. Pancreatic. She paused, swallowing. Found out 2 months ago. He didn't want you to know. He said, let's not bother him, he has his career, his own life there. Let him work, not worry. 2 months. They hid this from me for 2 months. I clenched and unclenched my fists, feeling a monstrous mixture of pain, guilt, and anger boiling inside. At them? At myself? At this damn disease? But how? Could you? I would have come. I would have helped. The words got stuck in my throat. He decided so, son, Mom stroked my head. He didn't want you to see him like this. He wanted you to remember him strong. We sat in the room a little longer. The silence was broken only by the beeping of the heart monitor. Then Mom said we should go home. The doctors said he probably wouldn't survive the night, and we should rest. Home was empty and cold. Baxter, the old dog, met us at the door, wagging his tail, but even he seemed subdued. In the kitchen, mechanically making tea, Mom told me everything. How Dad lost weight, how the pain started, how they went to doctors, how they got the diagnosis. She spoke calmly, but in that calmness was such despair that my heart was breaking. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, drank cold coffee, and stared out the window at the dark street. Thoughts raced. 2 days later, my father was gone. He died without regaining consciousness, without recognizing me one last time. His body, weakened by the disease, simply gave up. The funeral was quiet. Neighbors came, a few of Dad's friends from work, Mom's colleagues. Mom held on with her last ounce of strength. She was like glass, transparent and fragile, ready to shatter at the slightest breeze. I handled the arrangements, talked to people, accepted condolences, and inside there was emptiness. A black, cold hole. After the funeral, I stayed in my parents' house. I couldn't leave Mom alone. Tommy, my brother, was in his final year of college in California and couldn't fly out. I called him. He was devastated, but we decided that Mom was the priority now. I helped around the house. Cleaned, cooked, shopped. Mom barely ate, just drank tea and sat in her chair, staring into space. Sometimes I heard her crying at night. I barely thought about work. Paul said not to rush. I was sure my job was waiting for me. I was a valuable employee, I had projects, I was respected. I didn't even check my work email. Why? Everything was under control. I was needed here. A week passed after the funeral. It was a gray, rainy day. I was fixing the crooked gate in the garden when my phone rang. The number was Cleveland-based, but not Paul's. I answered. Michael Carter? The voice was unfamiliar, female, from our. Yes, speaking. Michael, hello. This is Linda from HR at Secure Edge Solutions. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Due to the company's difficult financial situation and a workforce optimization, your position, along with several others, has been eliminated. I froze, holding onto the wet gate. Rain dripped down my collar, but I didn't feel it. What? I repeated, thinking I had misheard. What do you mean, eliminated? Paul said everything was fine. I have projects. I'm very sorry, Michael. The decision was made by the board of directors. The area you worked in has been deemed non-core. You'll receive severance pay for 2 months. We can mail your workbook and documents, or you can pick them up in person. We apologize. Linda, let me talk to Paul. Get Paul Grayson on the line. Michael, Mr. Grayson was also let go last week. I really don't know the details. I'm so sorry. She said something else, but I wasn't listening anymore. I hung up and leaned my forehead against the cold wood of the gate. First Dad, now this. The job, the career, the future I dreamed of. All gone in an instant. Laid off. Non-core area. Paul fired. I stood in the rain, and it felt like the sky was falling on my shoulders, pressing me into the ground. I don't remember how I got into the house. Mom was sitting in her chair with a cup of cold tea. She looked at me and seemed to understand everything from my face. What happened, Michael? You're not yourself. I sat down opposite her. Tell her I lost my job? Now, when she's barely holding on? But I couldn't hide it. Mom, I got laid off. Fired from my job. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and nodded. As if she expected it. As if she knew the world couldn't just leave us alone. It had to finish us off. It's okay, son, she whispered. We'll get through this. You're strong. You've always been strong. Her words, instead of support, stabbed me with sharp pain. Strong. Yes, I was used to being strong. I was used to carrying everything myself. Studying, work, Mrs. Reed, helping my parents. I always managed. But now I had no strength left. None at all. 2 losses in 1 week. My father and my life's work. The swift, confident, brilliant career I had built brick by brick, that I had fought tooth and nail for, turned out to be a soap bubble that popped at the first serious wind. The next day, my childhood friend, Jacob Miller, called. Jake, we'd known each other since the sandbox. He didn't go to college, was always practical, worked with his hands. We hadn't seen each other in a few years, but our mothers were friends, and of course, he knew about my father. Mike, hey, man. Heard about your dad. My condolences, seriously. Hang in there. How are you? How's your mom? Thanks, Jake. We're holding on. My voice sounded dull. Listen, here's why I'm calling. I'm a foreman on a construction site now. Lots of work, building a house outside the city. Need hands. I know you were a big shot with your computers, but if you need money or just a distraction, come by. Pay is decent, cash every day. The guys are good. Think about it. Jake's offer was unexpected. From lead cybersecurity specialist to a laborer on a construction site. It was humiliating, but it was real. It was money right now, to feed mom, pay the bills. I had some savings, but I didn't know how long this nightmare would last. And I couldn't afford the luxury of choice. I went to the construction site. The first day was torture. Me, used to an office chair and keyboard, picked up a shovel and a trowel. We were pouring a foundation. By evening, my hands were shaking, my back ached, and my palms were rubbed raw despite work gloves. The guys in the crew, some older, some younger, some with criminal records, some just losers like me now, chuckled at me. "Hey, computer guy, hold the level. No, not like that, dummy, the bubble has to be centered. Come on, move it." Jake encouraged me. "It's okay, Mike, you'll get used to it. You're a tough kid, did sports in school. You'll get into it." And I did get into it. The physical pain and exhaustion were almost good. They dulled the emotional pain. When you collapse by evening and can barely drag yourself to the shower, you just don't have the energy for self-reflection and self-pity. I stopped thinking about the future. I lived day by day. Wake up, get to the site, work the shift, get paid, give mom part for groceries, go to sleep. The house I grew up in felt foreign now. Without dad, it was empty. His chair in the living room stood vacant, his tools in the garage gathered dust. Mom perked up a little when I came home from the site. She'd make dinner, ask about work. I'd embellish, tell funny stories about the guys, just to lift the fog of sadness from her eyes a little. Evenings, I'd sit on the back porch, look at the stars, and think. Think about how fragile this world is. How quickly plans crumble. A month ago, I was sure of tomorrow. I felt like a winner. And now I was a nobody. Just a guy mixing concrete and hauling bricks. A guy whose father died of cancer while he was building a career in another city. A guy who turned out to be useless the moment he stopped turning a profit. I took out my phone. The wallpaper was a picture of me and my dad fishing, about 5 years ago. Both smiling, holding some puny little fish, but happy. I looked at the photo, and a lump formed in my throat. I wanted to howl out loud. But I couldn't. I had to be strong. For Mom. Strong. Always strong. Sometimes, falling asleep, I remembered Mrs. Eleanor Reed. I wondered if she was still alive. Probably not. She was so old. I remembered our morning teas, her stories, her wise eyes. And I'd feel a little lighter. In that life, the past life, there was meaning. I helped her, she helped me, with words, care, belief in me. And now? What's the meaning now? To survive? I remembered Professor Henderson. He probably thought I was an irresponsible slacker too. And I was just running to an old lady so she wouldn't be alone and wouldn't fall trying to get out of bed. Back then, it was important. Now it seems distant and unreal, like a dream. One day during lunch break at the site, I was sitting on a stack of lumber, eating a sandwich. An old welder, Frank, sat down next to me. A guy in his 60s, silent, his face carved with wrinkles like an old motorcycle tire. He handed me his thermos of coffee. "Here, take a swig. I can see, son, you didn't end up here from an easy life. There's a longing in your eyes, like a dog abandoned by its owner." I took the thermos, drank. The coffee was strong, sweet, scalding. "Thanks, Frank. Yeah, life, I guess. Life, you know, it's like a seesaw," Frank philosophized, lighting a cheap cigarette. "Up 1 minute, down the next. The main thing is not to fall overboard. At your age, I was at the bottom too. Wife left, got fired, thought it was all over, curtains. But no, I crawled out. You'll crawl out too, not by whining, but by doing." I listened to him and thought, will I crawl out? Do I have the strength to start all over again? Study again? Look for work again? Prove myself again? Or is this the end? Maybe this is my destiny, hauling bricks until the end of my days? But inside, somewhere deep, under a layer of ash and fatigue, a small ember still glowed. The same one that made me get up at 6 in the morning and run to Mrs. Reed. The one that made me pore over textbooks while others slept. The one that earned me an honors diploma. It was very weak, that ember. One wrong move, and it would go out forever. But for now, it was still burning. I sat on the construction site, drank coffee with a seasoned welder, and looked at the gray sky hanging over the unfinished house. Machinery rumbled around me, workers shouted, the air smelled of cement and sweat. And in my head, one thought kept spinning, what now? And there was no answer. Only silence, fatigue, and a photo of my smiling father on my phone. The life that had just begun to flourish had folded into this darkness so quickly it took my breath away. But I was breathing. I was still breathing. A month passed. 2, 3. Summer turned to autumn, autumn to rainy, cold winter. I got up before dawn, went to the site, worked until dark. My hands grew rough, my back got used to the load. I learned to lay bricks, mix mortar, work with rebar. The guys in the crew stopped teasing me and accepted me as one of their own. Jake was pleased. "You're doing great, Mike. You didn't break. That's the main thing." But inside, I was broken. I was just good at hiding it. I lived like an automaton. Home, site, home. I stopped following news in the IT field. It hurt even to think about what I had lost. I deleted all my professional accounts, stopped reading industry blogs. Why bother? Just to convince myself the world was getting along fine without me? Mom slowly started to come around. She began cooking a little, even visited a neighbor a couple of times. She held on for me. We held on to each other like two drowning people, and it helped keep us from sinking completely. One evening, I was sitting in my father's room. I rarely went in there. Everything was the same. His old razor on the shelf, his stack of fishing magazines, his work overalls hanging on the back of a chair. I opened the closet and came across an old shoebox. Inside were my old school certificates, some drawings I'd given him as a kid, and a thick folder. I opened the folder. It contained printouts of my articles on cybersecurity, which I'd published in the student journal, and a few letters. I unfolded one. It was a letter from Professor Henderson, addressed to my father. It was dated a year ago. "Dear Mr. Carter, I am writing to you, Professor Henderson from Ohio State University. I was your son Michael's instructor. I feel compelled to write you this letter. Throughout your son's years of study, I often reprimanded him for being late. Honestly, I considered him a frivolous young man who didn't value others' time or his own education. A week ago, I accidentally learned from a university staff member that all these years, Michael had been caring for an elderly woman every morning, a Mrs. Reed, who lives alone and needs help. He did it not for fame, not for money, although, I understand, it was his part-time job, but simply out of the kindness of his heart. And because of this, he endured my reproaches, without ever uttering a word in his own defense. I am writing to you to express my deepest respect for you and your wife for raising such a son. Michael is not just a talented student. He is a person with a huge heart and an inner core. His academic achievements, which, incidentally, were brilliant, he earned through blood and sweat, getting up before dawn and working through the nights. I am ashamed of my former strictness. I am proud to have been his teacher. Please pass on my words to him. And thank you. Sincerely, Robert Henderson." I read the letter twice, 3 times. The lines blurred before my eyes. So he found out. Professor Henderson, my harshest critic, figured it out on his own. And he wrote to my father. And Dad never told me. He just kept this letter in the box with my certificates. He must have been proud. I covered my face with my hands and, for the first time in a long time, I cried. I cried for my father, who never told me he was proud of me, although, it turned out, he had every reason to be. I cried for myself, for my broken career, for the injustice that had happened to me. I cried for Mrs. Reed, for that kindness which, it turned out, hadn't been forgotten, but had returned to me years later in the form of this letter. Mom quietly entered the room. She sat down next to me, put her arm around my shoulders. "You found it?" she asked softly. "Dad often reread that letter. Hid it from everyone, but I knew. He was so proud of you, Michael. Not just for your academic success. For the kind of person you are." I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my work jacket. Why didn't he tell me? About the letter? About knowing? That's just how your father was. Words were hard for him. He showed love through actions. Working so you could study. Being silent when he was sick so you wouldn't worry. He lived his whole life for us. And this letter was like a reward to him. Proof that he raised a good son. I sat and looked at the letter. Something clicked in my head. The little ember that had been glowing deep in my soul suddenly flared brighter. The kindness I had once shown to a stranger, an old lady, had returned to me in my darkest hour, reminding me of who I really was. I wasn't just a loser hauling bricks. I was Michael Carter, son of John Carter, a man who could make it, who studied with all his might, worked without sparing himself, and remained human. Professor Henderson believed in me back then when he learned the truth. Dad always believed in me. Had I stopped believing in myself? The next morning, I didn't go to the site. I called Jake and told him I needed a couple of days off. Jake, without asking questions, agreed. I sat down at my dad's old computer, gathering dust in the corner. It was ancient, slow, but it would do for a start. I opened the browser. The IT world hadn't gone anywhere. In the months I'd been away, there were new vulnerabilities, new attacks, new technologies. I read articles, forums, blogs. The information soaked into me like water into a dry sponge. I felt my brain, numbed by physical labor, start to stir, creak, but work. First, I wrote a letter to Professor Henderson. I found his address in the university database. I thanked him for the letter to my father and briefly told him what had happened to me. I wasn't asking for help, just telling him. The reply came 3 days later. Professor Henderson wrote that he was very sorry for my loss and for my job situation, and that he had an offer for me. An old friend of his, the owner of a small but very promising cybersecurity company in Pittsburgh, was looking for a sharp analyst. Not someone who just clocked in, but someone with a brain and character. Henderson had given him my number. A week later, I had a video interview. I was sitting in the same room, in front of the same ancient monitor. I was talking to Samuel Cohen, the owner of Iron Wall Security. I told him everything. About my studies, my work at Secure Edge, the layoff. And about why I was late for Professor Henderson's lectures. I don't know why I did it. Maybe so he'd know who he was hiring. Cohen listened in silence, asked precise, professional questions. And at the end, he said, "Michael, I talked to Robert. He told me one thing about you. This kid won't break. He's got a backbone, and he knows how to work. That's the kind I need. Forget about Secure Edge. Tomorrow I'll send you a test assignment. If you pass, consider yourself on the team." I passed. In 2 days, barely sleeping, I wrote them a small but effective script for network attack monitoring that exceeded their expectations. Cohen called me personally. "Start Monday. I'll see you in Pittsburgh. And, Michael, welcome to the team." I hung up and looked at my mother, standing in the doorway with worry in her eyes. "Mom, I think I've got a job again." She smiled. For the first time in a long time. A real smile. "I knew it, son. I always knew it." I'm writing these lines now, sitting in my new apartment in Pittsburgh. The night city hums outside my window. On the table next to my laptop is a photo of my father. I often look at it when my work hits a dead end. I remember his silent support, his belief in me, the professor's letter, Mrs. Reed, the construction site, Frank with his thermos of coffee. All of it is a part of me. Part of the journey that made me who I am. I don't know what lies ahead. Life, as Frank said, is a seesaw. But one thing I know for sure. Even when it's pitch black all around, even when it seems like everything has collapsed, there is always a light inside us. A light kindled by those who loved us and by our own actions. And as long as it burns, there is hope. Story 2. My name is Kyle Thompson. I'm 30 years old, and for the last 7 of them, I lived with a woman I thought I knew better than myself. Her name was Emma Watson, and then, for a short time, Emma Thompson. I often think about how we met. It was at a bar called Brick and Glass, near campus. I was bartending there 3 nights a week because my scholarship wasn't enough to live on, and asking my parents, who were barely scraping by themselves, for money felt wrong. I was pouring cheap beer amidst loud music, dreaming that one day I'd be on the other side of the counter with a glass of expensive whiskey, not wiping up spilled Budweiser. Emma appeared that evening like a vision, but not a bright, dazzling cover girl. No, she was quiet, serious. With a group of noisy friends who were soon dancing on the floor, she sat on a high bar stool, cheek resting on her hand, reading something on her phone. I went over to take her order and saw out of the corner of my eye that it wasn't Instagram or news, but some kind of chart. I later found out it was a market trend analysis for her coursework. "Miss, people usually dance here," I said, smiling. She looked up at me. Brown eyes, deep, a little tired. "I usually don't dance," she replied. "Can I just have a Sprite with ice?" I set the glass down, and we started talking. I didn't know then that this conversation would define the next 7 years of my life. She was an economics major, lived with 3 roommates in a tiny apartment, and dreamed of a job where she wouldn't have to count other people's money every day. I was a business major, lived in the dorms, and dreamed of the day I could rent my own apartment where no one would snore at night. We talked until closing time. I gave her my shift, and we went for a walk around the night campus. It was cold. I gave her my jacket, and she laughed, the first time that evening, saying I looked like a knight in tarnished Abercrombie. 7 years. That's a whole lifetime. 2,555 days filled with 1,000 little things. Her mac and cheese, her mother's recipe, that she made when she was sad, her habit of wrapping herself in my robe in the mornings, her laugh at my stupid jokes about clients. We graduated together. I got my degree and landed a job at a small firm called Apex Solutions as a sales manager. The job wasn't great. I sold warehouse management software, and my days consisted of cold calls, angry clients, and a tyrannical boss, Mr. Phelps, who wore awful ties and thought he was a sales genius. But the money was there. Small, but steady. Emma got a job at an audit firm, Grant & Associates. She hated it. She sat in a stuffy office from morning till night, checking other people's reports and finding mistakes made by people who earned 10 times more than her. She came home drained but never complained. Just drank chamomile tea and stared into space. We lived first in a cockroach-infested apartment where the wind blew in winter and it was unbearable in summer. Then we moved to a slightly better studio with a view of a parking lot. We bought a used Honda and saved for a decent car. It was life, ordinary, gray, but ours. And there was another topic, unspoken but always hanging in the air between us like a heavy cloud. Children. We started trying when we were 27. Emma said then, "Kyle, my biological clock is ticking. If we want kids, it's time." I agreed. I wanted kids. I wanted a little Kyle or a little Emma running around the apartment, throwing toys. At first, it was fun. We joked that we needed the practice, that it was the most enjoyable treatment in the world. But months passed. Then a year. The fun was gone. What remained was routine, scheduled by ovulation calendars, ovulation tests, basal temperature charts that Emma drew with the persistence of a maniac. I watched her change. Every month, a few days before her expected period, she became nervous, jittery. She bought tests in bulk, hiding them in the nightstand like drugs. And then, when those damned red days came, she would lock herself in the bathroom. I heard her crying, face pressed into a towel to muffle the sound. I sat in the kitchen, clutching a mug of cold coffee, feeling absolutely worthless. I couldn't help her. I couldn't comfort her. I could only pretend I didn't notice. We went to doctors, had a ton of tests. The doctors shrugged. "You're both healthy. Reproductive functions are normal. Just keep trying. Less stress. Less stress." Easy to say when your salary barely covers the mortgage and bills, when your boss yells at you for missing targets, when you see disappointment in your beloved woman's eyes every single month. I started hating myself. I felt defective. Yes, the doctor said I was healthy, but if we were both healthy, why wasn't it working? Maybe it was me? Maybe I was somehow wrong? These thoughts gnawed at me from inside like worms. Emma tried to be strong. She said, "Kyle, don't worry. It'll happen. We just have to believe." But her eyes said otherwise. Resignation had settled in them. And then, when I had almost resigned myself to the thought that we would remain a childless couple forever, growing old with cats. We had a fat orange cat named Martin. Something happened that turned everything upside down. I got a call. I usually ignore calls from unknown numbers, but that day, something made me answer. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice was businesslike but pleasant. "My name is Jessica Parker, and I represent the Sterling Group Corporation. We are considering you for the position of Regional Development Manager." I nearly dropped the phone. Sterling Group was the dream of any salesperson in our field. It was the Ferrari of logistics software. They only hired the best of the best. They paid 3 times the market average, offered stock options, sent you on trips to Europe. "Sorry," I said, thinking it was a prank. "I work at Apex Solutions." "That's a whole different level." "We know, Kyle. We follow the market. Your numbers at Apex are impressive, given the resources your company provides you. We value people who can work under tough conditions." We talked for another 10 minutes. She named the proposed salary. It took my breath away. I did the math in my head. With that money, we could not only cover the mortgage and buy a new car but also go to the best fertility clinic. IVF, if needed. We would have a chance. But there was one problem. The Sterling Group office was in Portland. That was a 3-hour drive from our city. Essentially, it meant moving to another state. I couldn't leave Emma, not after everything we'd been through. That evening, when Emma came home from work, I poured us glasses of wine and told her everything. She listened silently, her eyes getting wider. "Kyle, that's incredible," she exclaimed when I finished. "You have to say yes." "What about you?" I asked. "I'm not going without you." She thought for a moment. And then she said something I hadn't expected. "What if I try too? Sterling has a huge finance department. Maybe they need an economist?" The next day, I called Jessica back. My heart was pounding like crazy. I was afraid she'd tell me off for being pushy. "Miss Parker, I'm very interested in your offer. But I have a partner. My girlfriend, Emma. She's a brilliant economist. If I accept, is there any possibility of considering her for a position in your finance department?" Silence on the line. I squeezed my eyes shut. "Mr. Thompson," she finally said, "you have no idea how timely your question is. We just happen to have an analyst position open in the financial controlling department. Send her resume tomorrow." Emma got the job. Her interview went brilliantly. We sold our old furniture, gave Martin the cat to my mom, she adored him, and started preparing for the move. We felt like we'd won the lottery. For the first time in years, hope had returned to our relationship. There was still the matter of housing. Renting an apartment from scratch in Portland was expensive and troublesome. And then fate gave us another gift. My older brother Cole lived in Portland. Cole was 4 years older than me. As kids, we were inseparable, climbing trees together, fighting neighbor boys together, getting spanked by dad together. But then we grew up, and our paths diverged. I took the stable path: college, job, mortgage. Cole chose a different road. He was the creative type. He studied sound engineering, played in various bands, always hung out with musicians and artists. He lived for the day, never thinking about tomorrow. Our parents disapproved. "When are you going to settle down? Find a real job." He just brushed them off. We saw each other rarely but talked on the phone every couple of months, just to ask, "How are you, bro?" When I called and told him we were moving, he was overjoyed, as if I'd told him he'd won the lottery. "Dude, that's awesome," he yelled into the phone. "I'm so glad. Listen, I have a 2-bedroom. I'm renting a loft in the old district. The place is just awesome. I'm living here alone, like a hermit. Move in with me. We'll split the rent, you won't have to look for a place, and I'll have company." I looked at Emma, who was sitting nearby packing boxes. She shrugged and smiled. "I think it's a good idea," she said. "He's your brother. We'll live like a family." The move went surprisingly smoothly. Cole's apartment was exactly as I'd imagined. High ceilings, brick walls, huge windows, lots of sound equipment in one room, and complete creative chaos everywhere. Guitar strings, music magazines, empty beer cans. But it was clean. Cole had clearly made an effort for our arrival. "Emma, welcome to the Lion's Den." Cole hugged her when we met, and it seemed to me he held his hands on her waist a moment too long. But I chalked it up to his artistic nature. He'd always been that way, expansive, emotional, not always respecting boundaries. "It's really cool here," Emma said, looking around. "Right, Kyle? We'll be good here." The first months in Portland were like a honeymoon. The new job was challenging but incredibly interesting. I threw myself into Sterling's processes like a man possessed. My clients were no longer small shops but major chains. I flew on business trips, signed million-dollar contracts, and felt like a real player. Emma was also buried in reports but came home with sparkling eyes. She was finally doing what she loved: analysis, numbers, forecasting. Her bosses praised her. She was given a junior employee to manage. And at home, Cole was waiting for us. He'd cook if we were late, tell us funny stories about his musician friends, play great music. Emma quickly took charge of the household. Within a week, curtains she'd bought appeared, then candles, new towels in the bathroom. She washed dishes without waiting for Cole to get around to it, and he was happy. "Kyle, you have no idea how grateful I am," he'd say, sprawled on the couch with a beer. "I was living in a pigsty, and now I have a 5-star hotel. Emma is a miracle. Did you hit the jackpot or something?" I laughed. I was happy. I had a job I loved, a woman I loved, and my beloved brother nearby. We didn't stop trying to conceive. In Portland, we found an excellent specialist, Dr. Morrison. She said the same as everyone else: "You're healthy. Change your surroundings, eliminate stress." Often moving and a new job work wonders. We believed. We tried. And months passed. And then, 6 months into our new life, it happened. I remember that evening as if it were yesterday. It was raining, the usual Portland drizzle, fine and annoying. I came home exhausted after tough negotiations, dreaming only of a shower and a beer. Emma met me in the hallway. She was pale, holding a test in her hands. "Kyle." Her voice trembled. I walked closer. 2 lines. Bright, bold, like 2 lightning strikes. "Is it real?" I whispered. She nodded, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I scooped her up, spun her around the room. We laughed and cried at the same time. Martin, if he'd been there, would probably have fled to a corner. At that moment, Cole burst in. He was wet, carrying a bag of groceries. "What are you guys yelling about? The neighbors will call the cops." He saw our faces, saw the test. "No way? Cole, you're going to be an uncle," I shouted. He dropped the bag. Eggs broke, milk spilled, but nobody cared. He rushed to hug us, then grabbed Emma and spun her around. "This is so cool. This is just freaking awesome. We have to celebrate. I'll run and get champagne." "Oh, crap, you can't have any." We laughed until we cried. Emma insisted on getting married. She said, "I don't want to give birth out of wedlock. It's a matter of principle." We had a small ceremony at City Hall. I bought a simple but beautiful ring. Cole was the witness. We had dinner at a little Italian restaurant, just the three of us, then went home to watch a movie. Our parents were far away, and we decided we'd celebrate with them later, at the first opportunity. She became Emma Thompson. I was happier than ever. The pregnancy was easy. Emma was radiant. She worked until her 7th month, joking that the baby would be an economist from listening to so many reports. She glowed from within. Cole doted on her like she was made of glass. He made herbal teas he found online, ran to the pharmacy for vitamins, played calming music when she rested. Sometimes I caught myself thinking he cared for her even more than I did. But I chalked it up to his desire to be a good brother and future uncle. Besides, I was working hard, needed to provide for the family, save for the baby. Our son was born on April 14th. 7 pounds, 1 ounce, 20 inches long, a cry that echoed through the maternity ward. We named him Liam. We'd chosen that name during that first pregnancy when we first started trying. When they placed that warm, squirming bundle in my arms for the first time, I thought my heart would burst. I looked at his tiny fingers, his wrinkled little face, his closed eyes, and I understood. This was the best thing that had ever happened to me. This was worth living for, working for, enduring failures for. The first year flew by like a single moment. Sleepless nights, millions of diapers, bottles of formula, colic, first smiles, first coos. I reveled in fatherhood. I got up at night so Emma could sleep. I pushed the stroller in any weather. I sang him silly songs I made up. Cole adored his nephew. He could sit with him for hours, making faces, playing children's songs. He called himself the world's coolest uncle, and honestly, he wasn't far wrong. But one day, when Liam was about 14 months old, I was sitting on the floor with him, playing with blocks. Sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up his head. He had light, almost white hair. Fine, fluffy, like chick down. I instinctively ran my hand through my own hair. Dark brown, coarse. I looked at Emma's photo on the wall. Hers was chestnut, with reddish highlights. Strange, I thought out loud. All the Thompsons have dark hair. I pushed the thought away. Nonsense. Kids are often blonde and then get darker. My cousin on Emma's side was also blonde as a child. It's normal. But the devil had already taken root in my mind. A few days later, I caught myself studying Liam, trying to find my features in him. Eye shape? Mine are brown. His were hazel green, like Emma's. Nose? Mine is straight with a bump. His is a little upturned, snub. Lips? Mine are thin. His are full, like a cupid's bow. Chin? Mine is square. His is pointed, like who? I dug out old photo albums. Found my childhood pictures. I was my father's clone. Round-faced, dark-eyed, black-haired, with a heavy jaw. Then I found pictures of Cole as a child. He had light hair. Until school age. It darkened later, of course, but in early childhood, he was blonde. My heart skipped a beat. I started comparing frantically. Eye shape? Cole's eyes are slightly almond-shaped, a bit slanted. Liam's were exactly the same. Smile? When Cole laughs, his mouth twists to the left side. Liam does the exact same thing when he giggles. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I forced myself to calm down. It's paranoia. It's just nerves. I'm tired. I tried to talk to Emma. One evening, when Liam was asleep, I came to her in the kitchen, trying to keep my voice calm and steady. Have you ever noticed that Liam, doesn't look very much like me? She flinched. Barely noticeably, just a fraction of a second. But I noticed it. After 7 years, I had learned every movement, every glance, every micro-expression. I saw her shoulders tense. Kyle, silly, she turned to me with a smile, but the smile was strained. Of course he looks like you. He has your smile when he sleeps. And look at the shape of his head, exactly like yours. It's just a phase you're going through. All fathers go through it. They think the child doesn't look like them. It's psychological. Stop imagining things. She hugged me, pressed close. But her body was tense. I felt it. You just don't see yourself from the outside, she added. He really does look like you. Honestly. I wanted to believe. I really wanted to. I hugged her back and closed my eyes, trying to push the suspicions deep down. But they didn't leave. They sat there, in the back of my mind, waiting for their moment. I started remembering. The last 6 months before the pregnancy. Emma often worked late. A project, a crisis, the new boss, Mr. Harrison, is so demanding. Mr. Harrison, Henry Harrison, vice president of the finance department. An elegant man in his 50s, with graying temples, expensive watch, perfect manicure. I'd seen him a couple of times at company parties. He looked at Emma with a little more interest than etiquette allowed. He'd approach her, put a hand on her shoulder, linger a moment too long. What if it was him? What if that old fox took advantage of his position and Emma? No, I couldn't believe it. My Emma, who cried over infertility, who wanted a child more than anything, she couldn't do that. She couldn't betray me. And then I remembered Cole. His constant compliments. Emma, that dress is amazing. Emma, you're glowing today. Emma, you made such a delicious dinner. The way they'd sit in the kitchen late into the night, laughing about something while I read reports in the bedroom. How they'd go to the store together, leaving me with Liam. We'll be quick, Kyle, you rest, you're tired. The way he looked at her when he thought I wasn't watching. There was something in that look. Something more than brotherly affection. I pushed that thought away too. Cole was my brother. We grew up together. He couldn't. It was impossible. Doubts corroded me from within like acid. I became withdrawn, silent. Emma asked what was wrong. I brushed it off. Tired from work, crazy busy. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, turning scenarios over in my mind, comparing dates, remembering details. I remembered one night. Cole had gone to another city for a week-long recording session. Emma was sad, said the apartment felt empty without him. I didn't think anything of it then. I thought she was just used to the company. But now, I decided to act. Quietly, carefully, like a spy. I bought a home DNA paternity test kit from the pharmacy, the kind you mailed to a lab. Simple procedure. Swab the inside of your cheek, put it in the tube, mail it. I did it when Emma was in the shower and Liam was asleep. Took samples from myself and from him. Filled out the form, labeled it, sent it off. The week of waiting was torture. I looked at Emma and saw a stranger. I looked at Cole and flinched at his laugh. I looked at Liam and felt my heart tear between love and terror. On Friday evening, an email arrived. Results ready. Emma was washing dishes. Cole was in his room, mixing something. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, opened my phone. My hands shook so badly I could barely open the app. I entered the order code. The screen loaded. 1 second, 2, 3, and then I saw the numbers. Probability of paternity. 0.00%. My world collapsed. Literally. The bathroom floor dropped out from under me. I read it again, and again. 0.00%. Not 99.9%, not 50%, not even 1%. 0. Liam was not my son. I don't remember leaving the bathroom. I must have just opened the door and walked out. Emma was still in the kitchen, drying dishes. I walked over and stood in front of her. Who? I asked. My voice was strange, hoarse, not my own. She turned and paled at the sight of my face. Kyle, what's wrong? You're white as a ghost. WHO is the father? I yelled, so loudly Liam probably woke up in the next room. I threw my phone at her with the test results on the screen. She caught it with trembling hands, looked at the screen, and all the blood drained from her face. She turned white as paper. Kyle, I can explain. WHO, Emma? Harrison? That old creep from your work? No, she screamed. No, Kyle, I swear, it's not him. It wasn't him. It was. She stopped, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. At that moment, the apartment door opened. Cole walked in, cheerful, with a bottle of wine and a bag of food. Clearly planning a nice dinner for us. Hey, what's all the yelling? Did I wake Liam? I bought. He saw our faces, saw my phone on the floor, saw the expression in Emma's eyes. And his smile vanished like a light bulb going out. In that second, it hit me. Everything clicked into place. His constant presence, his care, his looks, the way Liam reached for him when he entered the room. It wasn't uncle love, it was something else, something deep, instinctual. "It's you," I whispered, looking at my brother. My voice gave out, I could barely force the words out. "You son of a bitch. It's you. You're the father of my son." Cole dropped the bag. The wine shattered, a red puddle spreading on the floor. "Kyle, listen," he started, raising his hands, backing away. "Don't you dare." I roared and lunged at him. I hit him for a long time, hard. In the face, in the body, wherever I could. I couldn't control myself. 7 years of rage boiled inside me. Rage at infertility, at failure, at lies, at betrayal. He didn't fight back, just covered his face and begged forgiveness. Emma was screaming, trying to pull me off, but I shoved her away like she was nothing. "How long?" I yelled, gasping for breath. "How long did it go on?" Emma was sobbing on the floor, in the puddle of wine. "It was only a few times, Kyle. I swear. Those first months after we moved. You were working so much, gone on business trips, and he was there. He was so attentive, so understanding. I was drunk, Kyle. We were drinking wine when you weren't home. It was a mistake. A horrible mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen." "A mistake?" I laughed. It was the laugh of a madman. "A mistake is oversalting the soup. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. But sleeping with your husband's brother and having his baby, that's not a mistake. That's betrayal." I stormed out of the kitchen, went into the bedroom, grabbed her bag, threw it into the hall. "Pack your things. You and your precious brother. I want you both out by morning. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." "Kyle, don't kick us out," she pleaded. "Where will we go? It's nighttime. And Liam? What about Liam?" "Liam stays here," I snapped. "No," she screamed. "Don't take him. He's my son." "He's not mine," I said in an icy voice. "Take him. I don't want someone else's." It was a lie, the most terrible lie of my life. I did want him. Liam was mine, but I was so angry, so blinded by rage, that I couldn't think straight. I went into the nursery, picked up sleepy Liam. He whimpered, sensing my tension. I held him close, kissed his warm little head, breathed in his smell, baby shampoo, milk, sleep. And then I handed him to Emma. "Go," I said, and slammed the bedroom door in their faces. I sat on the bed and listened to them pack. Emma crying, Cole mumbling, the front door slamming shut. And then silence. Complete, absolute silence. The next few days were hell. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat in the empty apartment staring at the wall. Then the anger kicked in. Cold, calculated anger. I called Emma's parents. Her mother, Martha, burst into tears on the phone. Her father, Robert, a stern man, a retired military officer, asked me not to act rashly. "Kyle, give us time. We'll talk to her. Maybe it can be fixed? Maybe for the sake of the child?" "Fixed?" I scoffed. "You want to fix your grandson's genetic code? The child isn't mine, Robert. He's my brother's. Ask your daughter how that gets fixed." I called my parents. Mom sobbed so hard I was afraid she'd have a heart attack. Dad was silent for a minute, then said in a steely voice, "Cole is no longer my son. I don't know him. Tell him not to even call. If I see him, I'll kill him." Cole moved out the next day. Took his equipment, his clothes, his books. We didn't speak. I didn't even come out of my room. Just heard him moving around, loading things, the door slamming one last time. Emma went to her parents' place in another part of the state. She texted me, begging forgiveness, asking for a chance to see me, asking for money for Liam, writing that Liam was crying and asking where Daddy was. I didn't reply. I deleted the messages unread. My lawyer said, "No contact, only through the court." I wanted a divorce and to be absolved from paying child support for another man's child. The law was on my side. The apartment became empty. The silence was deafening, but in that tomb-like silence, I began to hear myself. At first, only pain. Sharp, cutting like a knife. Then the pain subsided, replaced by emptiness. A huge, gaping emptiness inside. I missed Liam. I'd wake at night and reach for the empty crib in the next room, the one I hadn't cleared out. I heard his laughter in the sound of running water. I saw his face in every child on the street. I missed his heavy head on my shoulder, his little arms hugging my neck, his babbling, da-da, da-da. I knew he wasn't to blame. He was nothing in this story. Just a little boy loved by me, loved by Emma, who came into being because of a stupid mistake by adults. But seeing him meant seeing them. Seeing Cole. Seeing betrayal. I couldn't. I quit Sterling. I couldn't work there anymore. Every corner reminded me of them. The cafeteria where we ate together, the elevator where I kissed her goodbye, the parking lot where we met Cole on our first day. I left with nothing, no plan, no offers. I just left. For a month, I drifted. Drank. Scrolled social media. Reading Emma's posts, she blocked me after a couple of my angry comments. Then I pulled myself together. Found a small IT company looking for a sales manager. Less money, simpler tasks, but a different area, different people. That's where I met Chloe. Chloe worked in the marketing department. She was my personal earthquake. The complete opposite of Emma. Curly red hair, perpetually disheveled, freckles on her nose. A loud laugh you could hear 3 floors away, and a habit of barging into offices without knocking. The first time, she burst in yelling, "Kyle, your department has blown my deadline again. I didn't sleep all night because of you guys." I was taken aback. Usually people approached me with caution, deference. But this red-haired fury stood there, hands on her hips, glaring at me. "Sorry," I said. "And you are?" "I'm the person who lost a valuable client because of you," she declared, slapping printouts on my desk. We argued fiercely, but an hour later, she brought me coffee as an apology for yelling. And we started talking. Turned out she wasn't just loud, but smart, well-read, with a great sense of humor. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I thought my soul had died and would never resurrect. That I'd live alone, with a cat. I'd taken Martin back from Mom, and live out my days in quiet solitude. But Chloe broke through my armor with her sincerity. She didn't try to pity me or fix me. She just was there. Invited me for walks, pizza, stupid comedies. She told me about her problems, not asking about mine. She gave me space. One night, after a late work session and a couple of glasses of wine at the bar across the street, I told her everything. My whole sordid, ugly story. About 7 years with Emma, about infertility, about the move, about Cole, about the DNA test, about Liam. I waited for her to get up and leave. To say, "Look, you've got too much baggage, I don't need this." But Chloe took my hand and looked me in the eyes. "You poor thing," she said simply. "You're so strong. You've been through so much. And you deserve happiness, Kyle. You really do. Don't let them steal the rest of your life." In that moment, the ice in my chest cracked. And from beneath it, something warm began to emerge. We started dating. With Chloe, everything was easy. We'd bike along the waterfront, hike in the mountains, lounge on the couch watching series and eating popcorn. She didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't pry into my soul. She just accepted me as I was. I introduced her to Martin. The cat, who usually hissed at strangers, immediately jumped onto her lap and started purring. Chloe said, "A cat is a great barometer. If animals like me, I must be a good person." I laughed for the first time in a long while. 6 months later, we moved in together. Her little apartment was cramped for 2 plus a cat, but we were happy. We bought a big sofa big enough for all 3 of us, and that was our happiness. I thought the pain was gone. That I'd started a new life. But sometimes, at night, I'd wake up thinking about Liam. Where was he? How was he? Did he remember me? Emma had stopped writing. I'd blocked her after a few hysterical messages. Cole had disappeared off the radar. My parents were silent, afraid to remind me of the tragedy. Chloe sensed my moods. She'd hug me from behind, press close, and whisper, "It'll be okay. You'll get through this." And I believed her. A year after we met, Chloe, blushing and shy, showed me a test with 2 lines. "I know we weren't rushing things," she said, looking at the floor. "I know you have trauma. If you're not ready, if you're scared, I'll understand. We can." I didn't let her finish. I scooped her up and spun her around the room. Martin scurried to a corner, meowing indignantly. But I spun Chloe, laughing and crying at the same time, just like that time with Emma's first pregnancy. But this was different. Back then, with Emma, it was joy mixed with fear and relief. Finally. Thank God. Now, it was pure, unadulterated joy. Joy that our shared piece of the universe was about to arrive. That this was our child. Mine and Chloe's. No doubts, no shadows. The pregnancy was easy. Chloe was radiant. She worked until the very end, joking the baby would be a marketer from hearing so many creative ideas. We went to ultrasounds together, holding hands, choosing names. We decided to name our daughter Sophia. I was afraid. Afraid history would repeat itself. Afraid happiness would turn to sorrow again. But Chloe was my anchor. She said, "The past is in the past. We're building something new. It will be different for us." And I believed. We were preparing for the birth. Bought a crib, a stroller, tiny onesies. Chloe was painting blue clouds on the nursery walls, Sophia, but clouds are universal. I was painting the ceiling, standing on a ladder, listening to music. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something stopped me. "Hello? Kyle Thompson?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar but agitated. "Yes. Kyle, my name is Sarah. Sarah Wilson. I'm Emma's friend. We went to college together." My heart sank. Emma. That name I tried to bury as deep as I could. "What do you want?" My voice turned hard. "Kyle, please don't hang up, I beg you. This is very serious. Emma is in the hospital. She's very sick. She has cancer. She was diagnosed 6 months ago, but she forbade anyone to tell you. She didn't want to bother you. Now she's very bad. The doctors say, it's a matter of days." I was silent. My ears were ringing. "Why are you calling me? I have nothing to do with this." "Kyle, she's not asking you to come back to her. She's only asking for one thing, for you to take Liam. He'll be left all alone." The color drained from my face. I slid down the ladder, sat on the floor. "What do you mean, alone? What about her parents? What about Cole? He's his son, damn it." Cole disappeared right after that scandal. No one knows where he is. Emma's parents. Sarah sobbed. Her father, Robert, died of a heart attack last year. He couldn't handle it all. And her mother, Martha, has been diagnosed with dementia. She's in a nursing home, doesn't even recognize herself. Liam is in a temporary foster shelter right now. Emma is begging you to come. For his sake. He's not to blame for any of this. I sat on the floor, stunned. The revenge I'd so desperately wanted had come to pass, in full. Emma's family was destroyed. She herself was dying. My traitor brother had fled like a coward. And the little boy I once held in my arms was left all alone in this world. Chloe came into the room, saw my face, heard fragments of the conversation. When I hung up, she sat down beside me, put her arm around my shoulders. "Go," she said softly. "What?" I turned to her. "Are you crazy? Chloe, I can't drag you into this. This is Emma and Cole's child. This is a child, Kyle," she interrupted. "A child you raised for a year. A child you loved. A child who, according to this woman, still calls you daddy. He's not to blame for what his mother and your brother did. He didn't ask to be abandoned. Go, see him, then we'll decide together." I looked at my wife, who was carrying our daughter, and felt such gratitude I couldn't put it into words. She wasn't just my beloved. She was my guardian angel. I went alone. Chloe insisted, "It's your past. You need to close it yourself." I walked into the oncology ward and didn't recognize Emma. The vibrant woman I'd loved for 7 years was a shadow. Pale, bald from chemo, with huge sad eyes in an emaciated face. She lay under an IV, seemingly weighing no more than 80 pounds. She cried when she saw me. "Kyle, you came. Thank you." I was silent, sat on the chair by her bed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve it. I just take care of Liam. He's not to blame. He loves you. He still asks to see pictures of you two together. He calls you daddy." My eyes stung. I clenched my jaw. "Why didn't you tell me before? About the illness?" "Pride," she gave a bitter smile. "I'd already betrayed you. I didn't want you to see me like this. Didn't want you to come back out of pity." "I wouldn't have come back out of pity," I said. "I know," she nodded. "That's why I didn't call." We were silent. A clock ticked in the room. "It was a mistake, Kyle. My whole life has been a mistake. I was a fool. I thought you didn't notice me, that you were only focused on work and our problem. And Cole. He gave me the illusion that I was needed, that I was interesting. That I wasn't just a baby-making, dinner-cooking machine. It was an illusion. It destroyed everything. I lost you. I lost my family. I lost myself. I don't want Liam to lose you too." She held out an envelope. "This is a letter. For him. When he grows up. It has the whole truth. And my apology. Read it yourself if you want. Then give it to him when you think the time is right." I took the envelope, looked at her, and suddenly, all the anger that had built up over the years was gone. Only pity remained, and a huge, universal weariness. I'll take him, Emma, I said. Not for you. For him. She died 3 days later. I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. Chloe said that was normal. That I had the right not to witness that. I petitioned for custody of Liam. The process was long and agonizing, but thanks to Emma's letter confirming my paternity, legally, not biologically, in the absence of other relatives, the court ruled in my favor. Cole never showed up. Not at the funeral, not in court. He vanished as if he'd never existed. Now we live in a new house with a big yard. Me, Chloe, and our children. Sophia is 6 months old. She's a red-haired little imp with freckles, her mother's image. Chloe says she has my personality too, stubborn as a mule. Liam is almost 5. He's a serious, dark-eyed boy who adores his little sister. He brings her pacifier, sings her the songs I used to sing to him, and gets jealous if anyone else holds her. He calls Chloe, Mom. It didn't happen right away, but gradually. She never pushed, never pressured. She was just there. Fed him, bathed him, read him stories. And one day, he just came up and said, Mom, read to me. Chloe cried for half an hour afterwards. I told him about Emma. In simple, child-friendly language, that his first mommy was very sick and now lives in the sky, watches him, and loves him very much. He asks about her sometimes, looks at the photos we kept. But his world now is me, Chloe, and Sophia. And he's happy. Sometimes I watch them, tumbling on the floor, Liam building towers, Sophia knocking them down, Chloe cooking porridge in the kitchen humming show tunes. And I think about how strangely the cards are shuffled. 7 years with Emma were the path to this moment. My brother's betrayal led me to freedom. Emma's death gave me back my son. The pain I went through made me stronger and wiser. I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I deserved this quiet happiness, evenings when we all lie on the big couch together, watching cartoons, and Martin, our old fat cat, lies at our feet purring contentedly. I look at Liam. He has light hair and green eyes, the spitting image of Cole. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because his personality, that's mine. He's just as stubborn, honest, and responsible. He loves to build, not destroy. He protects his sister. He remembers us going fishing together, me teaching him how to hammer a nail. I raised him to be this way. Story 3. My name is Claire Hartley. I'm 38 years old. I live in a suburb of Seattle, in a neighborhood where everyone knows everyone, where it smells like freshly cut grass in the morning and expensive coffee from the local coffee shop opened by a couple of hipsters from California. I'm a senior systems architect at Omnitech Solutions. In short, I design complex cloud infrastructures for Fortune 500 companies. My job is to make the complicated simple and chaos structured. I love my job, probably too much, as it turned out later. My husband, Mark Hartley, 40 years old, though he always looked 35, aged well, thanks to my care, worked as a regional sales manager at a large pharmaceutical corporation, Medicorp. Tall, charismatic, with that Hollywood smile that, as I now understand, opened not only boardroom doors but also other people's bedrooms. We met in our sophomore year at the University of Washington. I was sitting in the library with my laptop, trying to fix a broken printer in the reading room. It wasn't my job, but no one else could do it, and I needed a printout. Mark walked up to me with that smile and said, "Are you a wizard? That printer hasn't worked since last semester." I got flustered, mumbled something about drivers and the print buffer, and he invited me for coffee as a token of gratitude on behalf of the entire student council. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner into a relationship, and the relationship into 15 years of marriage. We always complemented each other perfectly. I'm an introvert, preferring the company of code and servers. He's an extrovert, the life of the party, a guy who could sell snow to Eskimos and ice to natives. I was his quiet harbor, and he was my voice in the real world. We didn't have children. At first, we postponed it. Let's get on our feet first, then. Let's buy a bigger house, then. Let's get that promotion. And then we just got used to living together. Our golden retriever Luna became our child. We took her to a special dog salon, bought her organic food, and talked to her like a person. We had a big colonial-style house with white columns, 2 cars, his brand new BMW and my practical Subaru Outback, and that perfect lawn Mark loved to tend on weekends, wearing funny plaid pants. I thought we had the perfect marriage. We weren't just husband and wife. We were partners, comrades, a team. We survived him getting laid off. He quickly found a new job. My late-night deadlines. He brought me coffee. His father's death. I held his hand for 3 days while he drank and sobbed. We were each other's rock. Or so I thought. It all started about a year and a half ago. More precisely, I started noticing it about a year and a half ago. Mark always went on business trips. Pharma, baby, he'd say, winking. Doctors love it when you hand them samples and a pen with a logo personally. Before, his trips were predictable. He called every evening around 9, when he finished dinner with clients. He sent funny pictures from hotels, crooked paintings on the walls, strange carpets, minibars. He'd text, "Miss you and Luna. Don't let her sleep on my pillow." I'd smile reading that and bury my nose in his pillow that still smelled of his cologne. Then the calls became less frequent. At first, I chalked it up to time zone differences, to being busy. Then they stopped altogether, replaced by dry texts. Dinner with client. We'll call later. Later never came. Urgent meetings started happening on weekends. Claire, honey, sorry, Dave, his best friend, asked for help with his car. Or, the boss called an unscheduled briefing on Sunday. Can you believe it? I believed. I trusted. And then the phone got a password. I know what all the internet relationship gurus say. If your partner puts a password on their phone that you don't have, run. But Mark explained it with corporate policy. New security rules, honey. The company requires biometrics and complex passwords because we work with doctors' personal data. If the phone gets stolen, I'm done. It sounded logical. I work with data too. I understand the importance of security. One night, he fell asleep before me. I was sitting in bed with my tablet, reading technical documentation. His phone, lying on the nightstand, suddenly lit up. The vibration was silent, but in the silence of the bedroom, I heard it and saw the flash of light out of the corner of my eye. I mechanically turned my head. A WhatsApp notification was on the screen. Sender's name, Stephanie. Message text. Missing your hands today. They work magic. Something inside me broke. You know that feeling when you're in an elevator and the cable snaps? That's it. A sharp fall into emptiness. I froze, afraid to breathe. My brain, used to analyzing data, frantically searched for alternative explanations. Stephanie? Maybe a new colleague? Magic of hands? Maybe he was giving her a massage? He used to love giving massages, to me. Before, I looked at his sleeping face, so serene, so familiar, and felt something inside me dying. I didn't wake him. I didn't make a scene. I'm a woman with a technical mind. Emotions are bugs in the system. They need to be identified, isolated, and only then can a decision be made. A scene made on emotion is an action with an uncertain outcome. I needed facts. I needed proof. I needed a full system dump. The next morning, I acted normal. I made him eggs and bacon. He liked the yolk runny, poured coffee into his favorite mug that said, "World's best dad to Luna." We didn't have kids, but the dog counts, right? Kissed him goodbye, waved as his BMW disappeared around the corner. And then I closed the door, got out my work laptop, a powerful one with 3 monitors, a real war machine, and got to work. The first thing I did was log into our home router's settings. We both used the same Wi-Fi. It was a network I had set up, optimized, and of course, had full control over. I enabled detailed traffic logging. I put a sniffer on the MAC addresses of all his devices. Phone, laptop, even his smartwatch. Every packet of data that left his phone or arrived on it was now being copied to my secure server. Simultaneously, I accessed his Google account settings. We'd been on a family plan for years, and I knew all his passwords. Not because I was spying, but because we trusted each other. He just wrote them in a notebook, and I used it once to set up his new email. The passwords hadn't changed since. Trust, right? Google Maps showed me something interesting. Over the last 3 months, his location during nighttime hours, when he was supposedly on business trips in Chicago, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, was consistently within a 40-minute drive of our house. Specifically, in the area with motels on the I-405 highway, near the airport. Convenient for business trips, right? Fly in, stay at a motel near the airport, not downtown. Strange for a sales manager who's supposed to impress clients. But who am I to judge? Then I tackled his iCloud. I guessed the password on the 3rd try. It was his childhood dog's name, who died 10 years ago, and his birth year. People are predictably boring. I ran a script to download all backups from the last 6 months. When they finished loading onto my hard drive, I opened the WhatsApp messages folder. What I saw there was impossible to interpret in 2 ways. This wasn't just flirting. This was a full-blown parallel life. The correspondence with Stephanie, I learned her last name later, Stephanie Williams, 29, yoga instructor, was filled with details that made me sick. Photos in bed, not our bed, thank God, the motel bed, discussions of their future vacation. They were planning to fly to the Caribbean while I thought he was at a conference in Las Vegas, declarations of love. But the most painful part was something else. I found a thread of messages with his best friend Dave. They'd been friends since college. Dave was the best man at our wedding. We barbecued with them every weekend. Mark wrote to Dave, "Dave, old buddy, you have no idea what I'm up to. Stephanie is fire. She's alive, spontaneous. And Claire. Claire is smart, she's a genius, but she's so socially awkward and immersed in her work that she won't even notice my absence. She's like a robot. I'm tired of her predictability. Every day the same thing. Work, dinner, dog, paperwork. She's convenient, she's a great sysadmin who cooks dinner and takes care of the house, but living with a robot is boring. Stephanie makes me feel alive." Dave replied, "Be careful, man. Claire is a good woman. If she finds out, you'll regret it. Mark. She won't find out. She's in her own world. I'm just a piece of furniture to her." I sat and reread those lines over and over. Robot, convenient sysadmin, piece of furniture. 15 years. 15 years I was his support, his backup, his home front. I postponed my ambitious projects to go to his boring corporate events with him. I tolerated his mother, who didn't like me. I wiped his tears. And here it was, the gratitude. At that moment, something inside me clicked, finally and irrevocably. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, crystal-clear rage. A rage that doesn't need shouting and breaking dishes. It needs planning. It needs architecture. I decided I wouldn't just leave. I wouldn't gift him freedom. I would rewrite reality. I would show this salesman what it means to mess with a systems architect. I realized that a simple divorce with a 50-50 asset split was too easy. In our state's laws, infidelity itself doesn't affect asset division much, unless it's proven that he spent marital funds on the mistress. And he did. Judging by the credit card statements I found in his email, he paid for motel rooms, dinners at expensive restaurants, purchases at lingerie boutiques and jewelry stores. Over 6 months, it added up to a considerable sum, about $40,000. That was our joint money, money that could have gone towards fixing the roof or that vacation we kept postponing. I needed to document this legally, to have leverage. But I couldn't just go to a lawyer with screenshots I'd obtained myself. It could be contested. I needed a professional. I hired a private investigator. His name was Sam Rodriguez. Sam turned out to be a former hacker who had retired about 10 years ago and opened a detective agency. He understood technology as well as I did, maybe better. We met in a coffee shop, and I showed him what I'd already gathered. He whistled and said, "Mrs. Hartley, you've got a ready-made report here." "Why do you need me?" I replied, "I need it to be legal. I need it to hold up in court. And I need photos. Personal, compromising ones, with dates and times. Do this, and I'll pay double." Sam took the case. In a month, he had gathered enough material for a small film. Photos of Mark and Stephanie leaving the motel. Video of them kissing in the parking lot. Receipts from restaurants he managed to get through waiters he knew. Even footage from security cameras in a mall where Mark bought her a ring. Not an engagement ring, just a trinket, but for $3,000. While Sam worked, I played a role. I became the perfect wife. The most understanding, the most convenient. I stopped asking about business trips. I stopped waiting for him in the evenings with dinner. I stopped being interested in his plans. I just smiled and went about my business. Mark flourished. He became even more arrogant, even more careless. One day he even joked at breakfast, "Claire, you're gold." Other wives nag, demand attention, but you understand that a man needs space. I smiled back and took a bite of my toast. Inside me, icy pipes were singing. But I wasn't just playing a role. I was waging my own war of attrition. With small things. Psychological sabotage. I replaced his expensive Italian shampoo with a cheap generic brand from the supermarket. His hair became dull, and he started scratching his head. I stopped buying his favorite craft beer, forgetting it on the shopping list every time. I started oversalting the food just a tiny bit. Just a little, on the threshold of perception, but enough for his subconscious to register irritation. I accidentally rearranged things in his closet so he couldn't find his favorite cufflinks. When he started grumbling, I gave him wide innocent eyes. "Oh, honey, sorry, I've been so swamped at work with this new project. You understand, I'm just a robot, sometimes I glitch." He didn't hear the sarcasm. I was preparing for the final battle. I had the dossier. I had a lawyer. I had a plan, scheduled day by day. I knew that next Friday Mark had another business trip to that same motel. I planned to go there with Sam, make a scene, film everything, and hand him the divorce papers right in the parking lot, in front of Stephanie. Beautiful, dramatic, with witnesses. But life, as always, made its own adjustments to my perfect code. It was a Tuesday evening. Mark was at the gym. Now I knew the gym was also part of his legend, to meet Stephanie. I was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea and reading Sam's report, when the doorbell rang. Luna barked and ran to the hallway. I opened the door, expecting to see the neighbor with another charity collection or a delivery person. On the doorstep stood her, Stephanie Williams, in the flesh. I recognized her instantly from the photos, but in reality, she looked different. No makeup, with red, swollen eyes, in simple sweatpants and a hoodie under which disheveled light brown hair was hidden. She was pale and looked like she hadn't slept in days. I was stunned. My brain frantically went through options. Why was she here? To start a fight? To demand I let Mark go? To gloat over her victory? I gripped the doorknob so hard my knuckles turned white. "Are you Claire?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. "Can I come in? Please. It's really important. It's about Mark." Curiosity overcame fear and anger. I stepped aside, letting her into the house. Luna, sensing my tension, didn't bark but sat beside me and watched the stranger warily. "Come into the kitchen," I said dryly. She came in, sat down on that very chair where Mark usually sat for breakfast, and burst into tears. Not prettily, with mascara running, but for real, sobbing, covering her face with her hands. Silently, I put a cup of tea in front of her. I waited. After about 5 minutes, she calmed down enough to speak. And she said something I never expected. "I know who you are. I know you're his wife," she began, sniffling. "He told me a lot about you." "I'm sure he did," I replied coldly. "No, you don't understand." She looked up at me. "He told me you had an open marriage. That you and him and his friend Dave have been swingers for years. That you don't mind him having outside relationships because you have Dave." I choked on air. "What?" "He said you were cold with him, that you were only busy with work, but that you'd agreed not to interfere with each other. So I didn't feel guilty. I thought I was just part of your mutual agreement. He promised you'd never come to me and make a scene because you were in the same kind of relationship yourself." I listened in disbelief. This man I'd spent 15 years with had created an entire alternate universe for his mistress, where I was a freakish swinger wife. He had turned everything between us inside out to justify his infidelity and absolve himself of guilt. "I ran into Dave at a bar yesterday by accident," Stephanie continued. "We got talking, he was tipsy. I asked him what it was like being the third wheel in your marriage. He almost choked on his whiskey. He said, 'What do you mean, third wheel? Claire and Mark are the most monogamous couple I know. Claire can't stand Dave, she thinks he's a bad influence on Mark. They never. What are you talking about?' She started sobbing again. I went online. I found your photos. 15 years of couple photos. Wedding, anniversaries, vacations. You look happy. You don't look like the woman from his stories." I realized he'd lied to me from the very beginning. I was just a toy to him. I broke up with him this morning. Told him never to come near me again. I sat across from her and watched her cry. My mortal enemy, the destroyer of my marriage, the object of my revenge, was sitting in my kitchen crying because she had been deceived too. That she was also a victim of his pathological lying. At that moment, something clicked inside me again, but this time not from rage. The revenge plan I had so carefully constructed developed a crack. I stood up, poured myself some tea too, sat down opposite her, and calmly said, "Stephanie, I've known about you for exactly 4 months. I have a private investigator's report with your photos in various poses, including ones that probably can't be shown in polite company. I know how much money he spent on you. I know where you met. I know what he said to you in bed." She paled even more, stopping her tears. "I was planning to destroy Mark," I continued. "And, to be honest, in my plans, you were collateral damage. I wouldn't have spared you. But now I hear your story, and I realize, he used both of us. Just in different ways." She was silent, clutching the mug. "I have a better offer than just crying and hating each other. Do you want to get back at him?" She looked up at me. A spark ignited in her eyes, very similar to the one burning in mine. "What do I need to do?" And so our union was born. We called it Operation Robot and Yoga. I was the brain, the architect, the back end. She was the undercover agent, the front end, the one who knew Mark from the other side. Sam, my pie, was initially freaked out by this turn of events, but being a professional, he quickly assessed the potential and became our technical consultant. Our first task, finances. Stephanie told me something the detectives didn't know. Apparently, Mark had borrowed money from her. Significant amounts. He told her a sob story about having a sick sister, an only child. He never had a sister, not even in memory, who urgently needed an expensive operation. He swore he'd pay it back with interest as soon as he got his annual bonus. Stephanie, believing him, lent it. She still had the promissory notes. For $20,000. "Why didn't you tell the detective this?" I asked. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared that if the money came out, I could be accused of fraud or something. I just wanted to forget about it." I looked at the notes. This was gold, legally provable debt that could be used. But the juiciest part was something else. Mark, as it turned out from conversations with Stephanie, had invested all his spare money and our joint savings, which I thought were sitting in a term deposit, in a shady cryptocurrency exchange. He was chasing quick riches, dreaming of quitting his job and living large. Stephanie even helped him set up the wallet, and she knew the password. "Can you access his wallet?" I asked. "If he hasn't changed the password." "Yes," she nodded. That same night, while Mark slept in the next room, we still slept in the same bed. Imagine that circus, Stephanie, sitting at her own place, connected to his wallet via remote access I set up for her. I watched via screen mirroring. She transferred all his crypto assets, about $50,000, part of which was our joint property, to a shell account we opened through Sam in an offshore zone. The account was in the name of a shell company. Technically, it was theft. But we reasoned. He stole this money from the family. Part of it he owed to Stephanie. We were just recovering assets for the family budget. The second phase, social isolation. Mark highly valued his image as a successful family man and life of the party. We decided to destroy this image. Stephanie, being a yoga instructor, had a wide circle of acquaintances. She began carefully leaking information about his exploits. Not directly, but through, accidentally, dropped phrases to mutual acquaintances. "Oh, do you know Mark? We crossed paths at a motel once, he was so funny, always hiding." Or, "Strange, he said he had an open relationship, but his wife seems to think otherwise." Rumors started spreading. I, meanwhile, focused on his work. Mark wasn't clean in his professional life either. I'd long suspected he took credit for others' work. By hacking his work email, guessing the password again. Now it was Stephanie's birthday, idiot, I found proof. He would forward his subordinates' reports to himself, change the header, and send them to management as his own. I compiled a dossier and anonymously sent it to HR and his direct supervisor. I included screenshots, dates, the real authors' names. An investigation wasn't long in coming. While we were planning and carrying out our diversions, Stephanie and I talked a lot. At first, it was only business meetings, discussing plans, handing over data, coffee in neutral cafes. But gradually we started talking about life. I got to know the real her. She turned out not to be the frivolous husband hunter I had imagined. Stephanie grew up in a small town in Idaho, came to Seattle to study to be a physiotherapist, but dropped out of college due to lack of money. Yoga became not just a job for her, but a salvation after a difficult relationship in the past. She was smart, well-read, but emotionally vulnerable and trusting. Mark sensed this and used it. She sincerely believed she was helping a man who was in a tough spot with a sick sister. She admired my composure and analytical mind. "You're like a detective in a movie," she said once. You calculate everything 10 moves ahead. And you're like a spark, I replied. You know how to feel people. I'm learning that from you. We started seeing each other more often. She dragged me to her yoga classes, and I, a person used to sitting at a computer for 16 hours, suddenly discovered my own body. She laughed at my clumsiness but patiently corrected my poses. I helped her set up her website, sort out her taxes, and protect her small savings from inflation. We walked Luna together, and I was surprised to notice that Luna, usually wary of strangers, wagged her tail when she saw Stephanie. One evening, after a particularly hard day, we learned Mark was getting suspicious and trying to change passwords. We were sitting in my kitchen, drinking wine, watching the rain outside. We talked about random things. And suddenly I caught myself thinking that I felt good. Calm and good. Not with Mark, whom I hated, but with her, with this girl who was supposed to be my enemy. I pushed the thought away. We had a goal. We couldn't get distracted. Judgment Day came 3 months after the start of our operation. I invited Mark to a serious family talk. Said we needed to discuss our relationship. He arrived irritated. Recently his life had turned into hell. An investigation was underway at work. Friends were giving him strange looks. The beer was gone. The shampoo made his hair feel weird. And the crypto wallet was empty. He walked into the living room and froze. Sitting there were me, Stephanie, and Sam with his laptop. Glasses of water were on the coffee table. What the hell is going on here? He growled, staring at Stephanie. You? What are you doing here? We talked about everything. I asked you not to come here. Sit down, Mark, I said calmly, pointing to the armchair opposite the sofa. We have a presentation for you. Let's call it Mark's Year in Review. An annual report, so to speak. I connected my laptop to the large TV on the wall. A splash screen appeared with a logo I designed specially for the occasion. A crossed-out heart and the text, Hartley Industries, liquidation. What the hell? Mark tried to stand up. Sit, Sam growled unexpectedly menacingly. This won't take long. I started clicking through the slides. Slide 1. A photo of Mark and Stephanie kissing in the motel parking lot. Close-up with date and time stamped by Sam. This is your business trip to Chicago, March 15th. Actually, it was the Chicago Motor Inn on the 405. Slide 2. A screenshot of the chat with Dave. And this is your opinion of me, expressed to your best friend. Robot, convenient sysadmin. Nice, Mark. Very poetic. Slide 3. A copy of the promissory note for $20,000, signed by his hand. This is the debt to Stephanie for the treatment of your non-existent sister. You know that fraud for the purpose of obtaining money is a jail-worthy offense? Mark's face was lengthening. His gaze darted from me to Stephanie and back. Slide 4. The letter from Medicorp, HR about the commencement of an internal investigation. These are the consequences of my anonymous assistance to your management. Looks like it smells not only of firing but also of criminal charges for appropriating others' work results. Slide 5. A screenshot of the empty crypto wallet. And finally, your investments. Remember that startup that was supposed to make you a millionaire? It went bust. All your money, including what you stole from our family budget, is gone. Alas, market volatility. This is a lie, he shouted, jumping up. You conspired. You bitches robbed me. Stephanie, you're with her? You betrayed me? Stephanie looked at him calmly. Betrayed you? Mark, I learned about your wife from you. You lied to me every day. You lied to her. You lied to everyone. We just compared notes. And you know what? You lost. I have a choice for you, I said, holding out a thick stack of documents. This is the divorce agreement. You sign it now. The house stays with me, the car stays with me, Luna stays with me, and you pay me compensation in the amount of half your future income for 3 years. In exchange, I do not hand this material over to the police. Not for embezzling family funds on your mistress, not for fraud with the promissory notes. They're already waiting for you at work, but if I give them irrefutable proof, you won't just be fired, you'll go to jail. He looked at me with such hatred that the air around us seemed to heat up. You monster. You planned this. You used her. He jabbed a finger at Stephanie. We used each other to get rid of you, I corrected. It's called synergy. Works great in business. Sign. He signed. With a trembling hand, but he signed. Sam witnessed it. That same night, he packed his bags and left for his mother's. I watched his BMW disappear into the darkness, feeling not pain, not relief, but a strange emptiness. 15 years ended just like that. A dry deal in the living room. The divorce was quiet. Mark tried to sue, but my lawyers were stronger, and his leverage was gone. He was fired from the company a month after the investigation started. Dave stopped talking to him after finding out Mark had thrown him under the bus in the swinger story. His mother, to whom I'd sent an audio recording of him boasting to his friends, called me and apologized for half an hour. His career was destroyed, his reputation ruined, his money gone. I repaid Stephanie her $20,000 with interest from those crypto savings we had requisitioned. She opened her own small yoga studio, and I helped her with the business plan and automating her accounting. We kept seeing each other. Now without revenge plans, just because. We went to the movies, walked, took weekend trips out of town. I noticed I was looking forward to these meetings. That I missed her voice, her laugh, her habit of always getting confused in my technical explanations. One day, 6 months after the divorce, we were sitting on the porch of my house, drinking tea, watching the sunset. Luna dozed at our feet. Stephanie suddenly turned to me and said, "You know, Claire, Mark was right about one thing." "What's that?" I tensed. "He said you weren't emotional. But that's not true. You just keep your emotions deep inside. And when you let them out, they're very strong. I saw that when we were planning the revenge. And I see it now." She paused and added quietly, "I think I'm falling in love with you. And it's not because we went through fire together. It's just because you're you." I froze. I had never thought about women that way. 15 years with a man, a heteronormative life, work, home. But at that moment, looking at her, at the sunset, at Luna, I realized I felt the same. That all these months I hadn't been waiting for revenge, but for her. That she had become more important to me than my broken marriage. "Me too," I said quietly. And it was the truth. Another year has passed since then. We live together. In my house, which has become our house. Stephanie moved in her things, her yoga mats, her books. She taught me to meditate, and I taught her to program in Python, beginner level, but she tries. Luna adores her more than me, honestly. In the mornings we have breakfast together, and I wake up feeling like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Yesterday was the anniversary of our talk with Mark. We opened a bottle of good wine he once brought from France and hid in the cellar. We sat on the porch, laughed, remembering how we trembled over his wallet. And then we made love, and it was better than anything I had with him in 15 years. Mark thought he found a real woman as opposed to me, the robot. He found her, only now she lives with me. Sometimes in the mornings she hugs me from behind, kisses my neck, and whispers, "Good morning, my little genius robot." Thank you, Mark. You freed me from yourself and gave me the love of my life. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And preferably with breakfast in bed from your ex-mistress.